So if there are two things on LinkedIn that nobody cares about when you're doing social selling, it's you and your company. And when sellers drop the you and marketers drop the company, that's where the magic happens, because then you merge the two. You don't talk about yourself or about your company, you talk about the problems that your buyers are trying to solve. That's the easiest part of it, because that's what attracts them. They care about their own problems. They don't care about your company, but you happen to solve the problems, and then that's how they find you.
I'm super excited for the conversation today. We're going to talk a lot about social selling, measurement, incrementality, Dreamdata, but just to maybe kick things off, who are you? And what is your experience with social selling?
Yeah, for sure. So my experience with social selling is a bit more than 4 years old. And before that, my experience with social selling was working at large enterprises where you just reshare your stuff, like what marketing tells you. But 4 years ago, I joined Dreamdata. It's a startup. And as a startup, you don't really have a lot of money to invest into marketing. So we started, okay, we need to be on LinkedIn, and we have to figure out how, because this is the medium where marketers are at. We're selling to marketers. Let's try to reach them. So it was very natural and organic to try to figure out how this works. But suddenly, with getting more team involved and trying to measure it, it became a thing. We became known for being on the platform, and marketers can find us there. And that's where it started. So I'm in sales. I'm a sales leader for our Americas team. And I love social selling and seeing how it grows in smaller companies as well.
I think as much as you are a salesperson, I would say you're also a marketer. You're probably a smarketer. Like there's this interesting hybrid of things. And I should have kind of asked to kick things off, but social selling, it feels like a common term, but maybe folks are not super familiar with it. From your perspective, what is social selling? And also, why is it so important today?
Yeah. And very nice that you mentioned that part of marketing, because social selling only works well if it's coming both from marketing and sales teams. Because if you only adapt it in your sales team, it becomes those pitchy messages coming out to your prospects that nobody wants to respond to. But if it only comes from marketing, then it just becomes that type of a brand thing that only marketers care about and not all of the companies grasp, because we don't talk about the problems enough. We talk about ourselves. So if there are two things on LinkedIn that nobody cares about when you're doing social selling, it's you and your company. And when sellers drop the you and marketers drop the company, that's where the magic happens, because then you merge the two. You don't talk about yourself or about your company. You talk about the problems that your buyers are trying to solve. That's the easiest part of it, because that's what attracts them. They care about their own problems. They don't care about your company, but you happen to solve the problems, and then that's how they find you.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And if you think about the psychology of anybody using LinkedIn and like how they're scrolling and how they're interacting with content, we see so much of it. And if it's not about me, I care a little bit less, and I'm just going to scroll by. And there's probably this, I don't know if like cynical is the right word, but for me, I've been in this game a long time doing sales and marketing and now performance marketing. When I get a pitch, and it's a shitty pitch, I get very annoyed. And I almost get angry in some ways. I'm like, you didn't try hard enough. You're not, it's either the generic kind of email template, hey, can we grab a quick call, like this type of thing. Or some of these, you're right, even, LinkedIn posts where it's like, we released this new product and this is everything about our company and this type of thing, versus being very customer centric.
Exactly. And for marketers, it is a very important message to remember as well. We're marketing for the problem. We're not marketing to sell our solution. Because if you're able to just talk about the problem and other problems that the same buyers care about, then they'll suddenly start to understand, okay, this product or this company And these people are speaking about the stuff that I live every day. And later, when that problem arises, they know where to find you. So it's, what is it like? Only 5% of your target market is in the buying mode here and now. So it's close to impossible to hit the ones that are actually buying here and now. But if you're building that awareness that this is the company that understands my problems, and it's not necessarily just attribution, then whenever the attribution problems comes up, then they will reach out to you. Or you will hit them with the message at the right time when they're in the 5%, but they will know you. It will be so much easier for you to be relevant, on point, and familiar for them to speak with you.
Sure. I love that. And it kind of brings up different marketing touch points. One of the terms that I've kind of coined is this concept of paid marketing fit, which is an extension of product marketing fit. With paid marketing fit, we want to think about how do we align our marketing budget with demand for our product or service. And it's one of those things where, the first dollars you spend, whether that be in paid marketing or organic or what have you, is to go after a high demand audience because that's where the conversion rates are going to be best. That's where your CAC's going to be lowest. That's where you're going to be able to scale. But then you quickly tap out of those audiences and then you want to go after these kind of lower demand audiences. And so I really think of everything in sales and marketing as you're either capturing demand or you're building it. And then the question is like, okay, well, how do you capture demand and how do you build it? Demand is the intention to take action on something, and you talk about challenges and pain, and you talk about moving away from that. So yeah, it's a nice mix of, just human psychology mixed with like how you can use that to hit your business goals.
But it's hard. It's really, really hard because a company hires a marketer to do those quick fixes. Like you hire a salesperson, go out, do outbound, and we're going to start to measure how many meetings you book. The same for a marketer. Go out and capture demand. You can't build the demand within a couple of months. And that's why, due to that kind of misunderstanding of what marketers are supposed to deliver, we're seeing so much churn of marketers or so many marketers being fired because they are set to the expectation to go out and capture those 5%. And it's not that easy. They will have to build that up from the ground up. And if somebody has been doing that before, great. But even if somebody was doing that before and was not doing a great job, you're actually up for even worse because you will have to redo the work and build that kind of a trust. The same for sales. For you to build out those outbound lists, they don't just book meetings with you because your message is amazing. It's because it's a collaboration between marketing and sales. As soon as that is smoothly executed, it's so much easier for sales to book meetings and for marketers to start seeing the impact and not to fight for that kind of a credit. Oh, we booked this meeting from the cold call. No, you didn't. We were doing LinkedIn ads on that account for half a year. That's where you build this. That's why I booked the meeting, because they knew about us already. And it's not about the credit. It's about knowing when to push, to capture, and when to build it.
A lot of this is incentive problem as well, because when, a lot of marketers are still held to last touch attribution. And so they go to the places where the last touch attribution is the best. But then if you have any experience with incrementality or MMM, you realize that there's a lot of cannibalized spend. And then on the other hand, salespeople are a lot of times incentivized by meetings booked or qualified leads. And there's different ways to game that system. So as you think about kind of like building incentives to create synergies between marketing and sales, what does that look like?
To start with, it's not just last touch attribution that has flaws. It's also, in general, how we measure last touch attribution. Because if we leave last touch attribution to a Salesforce report, well, even that one's incorrect because it will capture what's being put into it. And you can even change that last touch attribution in the reports for them to look better. So incentivizing sales and marketing for the same goal, maybe marketing just for creating pipeline, not creating MQLs or form submits, creating pipeline and for sales to close it. And then what happens in between, there is some incentives for you to help out sales to close those deals from marketing side. then it's so much easier. But it's easy just to say this. It's very hard to do because there are so many touches that are impossible to measure, which means that both your leadership and marketing have to live with that kind of unknown. We know social selling is working. We can't really measure it. Yeah, we can see the likes and the comments and the engagement, but we actually don't know if they ever land on your website or they ever book with a salesperson before they actually do or tell you that they saw that. But we trust that it's working because we can see website traffic growing. We can see branded searches coming up much more than it used to do. And we start mapping most of the touches that we can do, including LinkedIn ads impressions, organic engagement, and stuff like that as well. So a lot of things are broken, but there's a lot of trust to be had in those teams as well, that what we're doing is building up to a bigger form submission rates, SQLs, new business within a long time period.
Sure. And a lot of this is top down as well. I feel like the conversation regarding, measurement of marketing and spend activities, even at my full-time role at Self, this is something that we've kind of, changed and adjusted over the years as new measurement has come out, right? So we all have different biases on what's working and what's not. And then the more that you can bring data to a CMO or a CEO, and the more that they're thoughtful about that, you can start to make adjustments. Now, if they're not bought in, then the whole thing goes to shit, right? So like there is that level of, that's a big problem to solve. That's a problem that Dreamdata is obviously helping to solve a lot. And, one of my favorite things, I was complimenting you and your team the last time we talked on your website and how engaging it is and awesome. So I definitely recommend folks check that out. But I love the view of the different touch points of different marketing and sales activities and how they, work together to convert folks. But my question to you is, with all of the clients that, you have access to in Dreamdata and maybe the case studies and stories, what does that look like for folks that might be onboarding Dreamdata or are just struggling with this kind of incentive problem? How do you see them, what are some of the stories that maybe you could share for folks that have solved it?
Yeah. So usually when clients come to us, they do have the problem of credit giving, because this is how most of the companies are built. It's like, how much did marketing bring in? How much sales bring in? How much did the ABM team bring in? And everybody comes in with their percentages, and usually the percentage comes down to 178 or something like that, because everybody thinks they bring in more than they actually do. And the mindset shift to the actual understanding was driving revenue in looking into the data rather than just look at my report. I'm bringing in 70%, you're bringing in 30%, and then we calculate it all. The customer journey view brings in a lot of those customers who want to understand that credit. It's like, oh, sales always say they book those meetings within like a couple of times they try to call them, but we know we have been targeting them, but we just don't know if they ever saw our ads. And that customer journey view brings the customers in, but at the end of the day, they start to act on that data. Because a customer journey view is a nice gimmick to have when you don't have it. It's like a little view into the world that, oh, this is how they actually buy. But what you want to do when you have thousands of clients, you want to understand, okay, what's bringing them in, what's helping them close, and how do we automate to get more of that? So taking it to the next step, that the next clients you're bringing in are either brought in faster, cheaper, or bigger deal sizes. And that's the big shift that happens for those clients. Because moving from self-build report from Salesforce and Excel sheets to something that is a huge data set where you have to understand what's working, what's not, it's a huge shift. But when you start bringing in those gimmick stories to your management, look, those LinkedIn ads impressions have actually brought in this huge client that sales have brought in through a cold call. Great. We did the job, they did the job, nobody wants the credit. We want to bring more of those clients. And these stories are the best because our clients see huge amounts of changes in their LinkedIn ads targeting, their Google ads targeting as well. It's insane. It's like at least all of the clients save at least 20% on their cost per acquisition for their clients. And this is the smallest number of all, just accumulated from everybody. Maybe some of them were good at it. Anyway, but the biggest shift is don't seek credit, automate what's working, and then everybody is starting to work as a whole team.
Sure. On a more kind of like macro level and back to social selling, I'm a paid marketer, so I think of everything in terms of just like dollars in, dollars out, right? And over the past, I would say year or so, I've become much more interested in organic content as a complement and just a synergy to paid media. And that's kind of what we've been talking about a lot here. If we think about, different size of business deals, if any B2B brand is going to be selling to SMB, mid-market, enterprise, there's different allowable CACs for each one of those different categories. And so those allowable CACs inform a different strategy, right? Meaning if I am selling to Salesforce, my CAC might be 10x or 50x of what it is if I'm selling to random small business restaurant, what have you. And so I can leverage that increased CAC to do different things. When you think about the different kind of strategies synergistically within these different categories, what does that kind of look like and what have you seen?
Yeah, very, very relevant point, because this is one of the first things that our CMO taught me when we started to look into Dreamdata at the very early days, because it was one of the first reports that we used to sell within Dreamdata when the Dreamdata was a very, not that rich of a product, I could say, 4 years ago. And he's saying, okay, so the way I work as a marketer, as a CMO, I look at what does it cost for me to bring in an MQL, SQL, new business from a specific channel, and how much am I ready to pay for it? I bring in my report, look at each and every campaign, and look at the CAC of those campaigns. And filter literally the ones that are too expensive, have a look at it. Am I overbidding for those? Am I underbidding for some of them? Maybe some of them are bringing in the big accounts and I'm ready to pay for it. So building out those filters for you to understand how much am I paying for some specific leads, and to top it off, how long does it take to close that client? As you mentioned, Salesforce CAC will be very high if you were to sell to them. And it will probably take you like 3 years to sell to Salesforce. Maybe you are going to sell in a small deal and it's going to incrementally grow within time and so on. But if you don't know how long time does it take for you to close that SMB versus Salesforce, and what is the CAC of each and every campaign bringing in similar types of sizes of accounts, then it's very difficult to take those data-driven decisions, because you need to put your small ups and downs of filters to understand, where do I cut or where do I add more money? The worst thing is underpaying for campaigns and underinvesting into those if those are actually working. That's the worst part. You can waste some of the money. It's okay because it's trial, A/B testing and so on, but don't underinvest into the ones that are actually working.
Sure. And how does that kind of relate to maybe a more broader content strategy? I want to get as micro as like talking about, the anatomy of a LinkedIn post and LinkedIn social selling index. But when you think about just kind of like a broad content strategy that can optimize for a lot of these goals, how do you think about planning that?
Most of the times I get a question, how do you in sales work with marketing for social selling? And that's a little bit of a similar topic, because the way we do is there is a lot of freedom for salespeople to post whatever they like personal brands, whatever, and so on. But marketing has their own schedule that is aligned with product as well. What are we releasing? What are we talking about? What do our clients care about? And within those pillars, then there is a calendar that we're doing this release right now or very soon. So start talking about, audience building. Or right now we're talking most of the times about LinkedIn ads impressions or G2 impact on revenue, on customer journeys. And then the whole sales team also starts to talk about that. The beauty of that is Besides that, marketing's message is amplified from what they're building in organic, what they're building up on our website, on any guest posts and so on, is that it's very easy for the sales team to create that type of content because we're literally copy-pasting each other's posts and nobody notices. We do change a little bit, or I'll add a selfie, somebody else will add another visual, and the audience would not notice that. But what they will notice is a similar topic that is aligned with what Dreamdata is talking about in general. And from there, then it will be so much easier for your buyers to find you. And that kind of snowball effect comes in from all of the teams speaking about the same thing.
Yeah, let's maybe look at a specific example of this. So you mentioned, you have a content calendar, different promotions, different content pillars that you're trying to talk about. If we said, we know that we have this new feature coming out, and so for the next month, we're going to, drive paid ads on LinkedIn, in Google, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to target specific buyers, and they're going to see, here's this new feature. Here's the challenges that we're trying to solve for, et cetera. And then they're also going to, get emails in their inbox, probably from salespeople talking about these challenges in addition to other things. And then they're going to go on LinkedIn and they're going to see posts about it. And so this nice little like hybrid, is that kind of the idea, is that they're getting, a mix of organic and paid content all around these specific areas that are like reinforced because it's very timely?
Yeah, I would say so, but it's not that cleanly engineered as you put it. You put it really nicely, and it would be nice if it was like that. But most of the time is like, we get a message. Well, marketing definitely have their own calendar, but sales does not really care about it, or they ever look at it. And marketers, our CMO would say, okay, next month we're releasing audiences. So in one of the Slack channels. So let's start talking about this, and we're preparing for this. Or he's saying, we're doing a huge release of feature X. Please don't talk about it, because marketing needs to release it first with product, and then you can go after your clients. You can talk about that on sales calls with your prospects, but never speak about this online. So they are steering what's being spoken about online. And then there are those evergreen topics like customer journeys that if you don't know what to post about, just post a customer journey and everybody will love it. So prospects start to feel that the company is everywhere and is pretty well aligned on the messages that they see or they get through their newsletters, because we talk and we get Slack messages.
What's the importance of a prospect knowing that a company is everywhere and that their message is aligned? Why does that matter?
Because when they speak with you, you're already familiar. So imagine if I were to buy from you, Paul, that would be so much easier because I've met you before, or I kind of know how that will feel, and I can trust you. I can trust you. I can trust that you will deliver the pricing that I can trust. I can trust that your team of customer success is going to deliver my support later as well. I can trust that your CMO understands what I'm talking about, and he's a co-founder, and that means that they built out the product the way that marketers understand it. So you feel that familiar face to buy from is so much easier, and you can trust giving out the money to that company rather than trusting another company that probably is less trustable, or you have heard some bad things, or like it's not that transparent. And when you go on G2 and you usually would search for the negative reviews, you always filter out the good ones because you know that somebody asked them to do it. You filter out the negative reviews, and then you understand, okay, so people who are actually commenting back, they're genuine, and they do give some of the feedback to the product. But I still trust them because they can address each and every of those on a call together with me. And I trust that either it's worked on or it's not as negative for me as it was for somebody else. So that trust of being everywhere is just the familiarity of marketing and sales working together.
I love that. It also just makes me think about adopting a long-term mindset to relationships. Gary Vaynerchuk actually got me into this, where his thing is, I want to make sure that my kind of goal in life is to have as many people come to my funeral as possible, which is like a little bit weird, right? But I just think about that, and in so much of the kind of business relationships I'm building, even when I'm doing a deal, like we recently onboarded a MMM, and we're going through contract negotiation. It's like, how can I work with this person for the next 5 or 10 years? Like, how can I trust them? How can this be the first deal that we do of 10 deals, right? And maybe some part of that is when you're going through negotiation, I'll give you this, you give me this. Like there's this give and take. There's this openness, and yeah, trust goes such a long way.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. And it's both in business and, as you're saying, in your personal life. Even though you think it's software and you can change it for next year, but you've invested so much of your time to buy the product, so you better buy something that is familiar and trustable, that if something goes wrong, then they will be able to fix it, and we can work this together out.
A little bit more granular into LinkedIn. So you actually have a course on social selling, which is awesome, and I'll link it in the podcast notes. I wasn't aware of this social selling index until I found it on your page. What should folks that are looking to build content on LinkedIn know about the social selling index, and why does it matter?
LinkedIn has released a social selling index for people to become a bit better at what they're doing, because they're very simple topics to follow. It's like, are you building connections with people? Are you messaging the right ones? When you post, do the right people react to your post as well? So it's kind of, or how often do you post, and so on. Very simple way of building out a more robust way of being on LinkedIn and being findable by the audience that you want to be found by. And since it is so simple, there is a threshold when you reach it, actually, and that it doesn't really matter anymore. But for people who start in social selling and want to figure out, so how can I be better at this? It's really, really great because it's simple. And then later you move over to the other part of how easy it is for me to reach the right audience, not just by posting, but if I reach out to some people, do they respond to me in a familiar way? Or is there something else that I need to do? Do I need to change my strategies of how I speak about on LinkedIn, because it's like one-to-many? And then when I go one-to-one, why don't they respond to me? So it's like, then there are layers of what you can do in addition to that as well. And on the courses part, I'm building a course with LinkedIn about social selling measurement as well. It's going to go out somewhere at the beginning of next year, which goes beyond social selling indexes more. How do we measure that it's actually working within revenue? How do we make sure that sales teams are not just pitch slapping and they get response? And how do we measure that it's actually bringing in revenue?
That will be awesome when that comes out. I wonder, and you're right, I think it's very simplistic, and it's a good way to kick things off, more so to give folks a sense of what they should be doing. The other big part of LinkedIn that everyone's always talking about is the algorithm and how content is served to the right folks. And I think that there's kind of two ways to think about this. One is, I want to create viral content that gets a crap load of impressions. The other is, I want to your point, create content that is resulting in a business action and resulting in revenue. And sometimes those things might actually be different. A lot of times they are. But from your perspective, you've spent a lot of time, building your audience on LinkedIn. What changes do you see happening in the algorithm today? What do you think folks should know about the latest on the LinkedIn algorithm?
Yeah. To start with, if you're starting off on LinkedIn, don't worry about the algorithm. Don't worry about the views and the engagement and so on, because what matters is, are you reaching the right audience? Are the people who are engaging on your posts the right people who you should be speaking with? Which means that you have to create content about those problems that they care about. This is the first step before you care about any algorithm, because in a second, I'll tell you how to create viral posts and that they don't matter. So, because if you created a viral post, let's say some funny meme or something like that, you can copy them. There are so many on LinkedIn, and a lot of people just post them as their own, and then you get insane amount of engagement. People start to follow you and connect with you that you actually don't care about. Do you care about connections in Australia who work within finance? I don't. So kind of, you have to create content that is relevant for you to connect with, to start with. And then later, if you happen to hit that button of a very high engagement post within the right audience, that's just like a gift that you should be thankful for, but it's not something that you should strive for all the time. How to create viral posts. What people like to see is other people. So to start with, if you want to have high engagement, put yourself out. Before in time, it used to be selfies on LinkedIn. If you do a picture of yourself, a selfie, something that people want to see another person. So think of what stops their scroll. A branded picture never stops the scroll. Text does stop the scroll if the first line of text is engaging and is interesting. Pictures stop the scroll. Think about the size of the pictures, because if you're posting a horizontal picture, it will take less space of your phone than the vertical one. Make sure you post the vertical pictures because they take up more space. People stop scrolling even naturally with their thumb more. The next thing that LinkedIn is pushing are videos. And I'm seeing a new shift as well within videos. So they did that video part of the feed where you can just do TikTok-like videos and stuff. Always vertical. They optimize for phone. Always vertical. Always your own face. Make sure that your face is close enough to the video as well. So people stop the scroll because you're talking, or do something at the beginning of the video that attracts them to stop and just to watch the first seconds. The next thing that actually also works very well, what I'm noticing right now, so if you open your video feed and start scrolling upwards, company page videos are appearing more and more. Not personal, company page videos, which is really strange because usually company pages are forgotten and don't get as much followers as people in your company and so on. And we used to say people follow people. But LinkedIn somehow started to push company pages with personal videos in them. Try to have a look at your video feed. Every second, every third video is company page. And if it is a person talking, maybe us on a podcast, and now we're going to repost this and talk about Dreamdata on Dreamdata's page, it will be so much more exposed to the algorithm than the other one. So it's changing all the time. Don't optimize for the virality, but take notice. You're following Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's doing crazy stuff as well. Our CMO always also say, oh, look, Gary's posting 2-second videos. Should we do that too? Oh, look, Gary's doing this. So follow that, be aware, but don't over optimize for that because that is going to change so fast. So make sure that the messages that you're doing are relevant for your buyers. Talk about the problems and put yourself out there. It's uncomfortable, but if you're not getting much engagement, nobody can see it anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then at a point, you're going to hit the right button.
Wow, that was amazing. And I think about this all from a psychological perspective, and why do we as humans engage with other human faces a little bit more, things like this. I was actually watching a Netflix documentary about dogs yesterday and how dogs know to look up into your eyes and show the white spot of their eyes, because for some reason we engage with that more, which is why they give you those puppy dog eyes, and they know to do that when you're, cooking lunch or whatever. I always give my pups a few slices of banana when I'm doing my morning breakfast. But anyway, I think a lot of that makes sense in terms of maybe some of the more qualitative aspects of the content, or maybe some of the more the structural things. When it comes to the content itself, though, this is something that I struggle with. I feel like sometimes I try to over-engineer my posts, or, try to over-edit them and try to sound really smart or whatever it is, rather than just being myself and talking like a human being. When it comes to the content itself, what have you seen work well for you?
Remember that the only person who notices your posts as much as you put the time into it is yourself. So if you were to repost the same post, let's say you created 5 posts and you would post the same post the next week and the next one, maybe just reshifting a couple of words or adding a picture, nobody will notice. Remember that when you're doing your over-engineering of your posts. So maybe you can over-engineer one post and then cut it out or ask ChatGPT to cut it into smaller pieces and then just add a picture or create a video out of it or do something different. It will make it so much easier and so much more fluid for yourself to just come out with the content, because it's basically marketing and advertising. It's this space that you take up on LinkedIn feed. And if somebody noticed that you have recreated the same post the second time, the second week, nice. That means they're watching. You have to be happy for that. And so for me, usually most of the content is just repurposed, because you have to find a pillar where you're at. What is it that you have to be remembered for? And maybe once a year rethink, okay, do I still want to be remembered for walking head videos, or do I want to sit down from now on and be more, wear a shirt or something like that to be more approachable, because, I want to reach more C-level or something like that. And if you recreate that only once a year, then it will be so much easier for you to not overstress about posting, because you've got so many other jobs to do, just not the LinkedIn post either. And make it easy, make it fun. And if it flops, nobody can see it either. It doesn't matter.
It's an experiment at the end of the day. I think there's something, different though, like when you're launching an ad and that, 20% of the ads are going to do really well, like over time. You have this experimental mindset. It's a little bit harder when it's, you're posting different photos of yourself trying to do things, or you're talking about your life, or, these type of things. And it can feel weird when you don't get the engagement. But at the end of the day, I think, like we kicked off this conversation with you saying, I think it's so true, like, people care about themselves. They don't care about you. And so if your content's not working, that's just like an indication that you're creating content for yourself more so than you're creating content for the audience, maybe in some aspects.
Exactly. And if you feel like posting personal content, do it. But remember that most of the people on social media are never genuine. So positivity sells, positive posts sell. But if you feel like you want to share something more personal and that is not as positive as you usually would post, be ready that people will not engage with it as much, because they don't know you and they don't know the struggle that you have gone through. If you came out with some very exciting news or something, well, everybody will be clapping because, well, we know what to do. It's like, good job or something like that. But if you told some sad story, something happened, well, people who care, they would write directly to you or write something a little bit more thoughtful on comments, but most of them would also choose to scroll past by it because it's hard. It's hard and you don't really know how and what to engage with it. So it's social media, literally. Sometimes I do have a feeling of posting something more personal, but there are months where I just don't want to, and I don't even put my face out into this. And unless it's like, a paid partnership or somebody who really wants a video, it's like, okay, I'll do the video, but it's just going to be a talking head. It's okay.
Sure. Yeah. That's such a good point too. Like, I think sometimes, and this is just like a broader kind of issue with social media too, of different, emotions that a lot of us face trying to engage with these platforms and do so in like a healthy manner. And I've kind of had that experience as well, where, you gotta go for a walk outside sometimes too. So
it's better go out for a walk if you have some like heavy thoughts to put it out on social, because most of the people are not your friends, especially on LinkedIn. And then go for a walk, get some easy thoughts, and just create a totally irrelevant post for that day, and you're good. Look at your dogs. their happy eyes instead.
Cool. This was a great conversation, Laura. Thank you so much for being on the show. And where can folks find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if I'm not there, then I've got an email address, but you won't write to me. LinkedIn is where you find me.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Paul.